sound of gunfire echoed across the canyon walls. Three Apache warriors advanced along the narrow ledge, their silhouettes sharp against the blood-red sunset. Ethan Stone Morgan pressed his back against the rock face, the warm, sticky blood from his shoulder wounds seeping through his buckskin jacket. His Colt Army Model 1860 felt heavy in his hand. 2 bullets left. 3 enemies approaching. Death had come calling many times in his 34 years. This time, it might not leave empty-handed. The lead warrior raised his rifle, a captured U.S. Cavalry Springfield. Instead of returning fire, Ethan lowered his weapon and spoke in Apache, words measured and clear. "I am not your enemy." The warriors hesitated. From behind them stepped an older man, face weathered like the canyon walls themselves. His eyes narrowed, studying Ethan's face with the intensity of a hawk. "The man who pulled Raven Wing from the ice waters," he said, recognition dawning. "The one who shared his last meat when the snow came." Ethan nodded once. The tension in the air dissolved, replaced by the weight of memory. 6 years had passed since that winter. 6 years of solitude on the Mesa Ridge Ranch. 40 acres of hardscrabble Arizona territory that nobody wanted but him. The land spoke a language few understood, of survival, of endurance. Ethan had learned to speak it fluently. He drove the last horseshoe nail into the hoof of his Kentucky warhorse, a 17-hand chestnut gelding that had carried him through Apache territory and back. The animal had aged better than most men, including himself. Ethan ran a calloused hand down the horse's leg, feeling the powerful tendons beneath his fingers. "Easy, Thunder," he murmured. "You're still the fastest thing this side of the Gila River." His Winchester 73 rested against the corral post, never more than an arm's reach away. The habit had kept him alive when others weren't so fortunate. The setting sun cast long shadows across the yard, turning the dust to gold. Another day ending in the same silence it had begun, until it wasn't. 2 riders appeared on the ridge, silhouetted against the darkening sky. They sat their horses with the stillness of men who knew the land and its dangers. Apache, not moving like raiders, but with purpose. Ethan's hand drifted to his rifle. They approached at a measured pace, stopping 30 yards out. The older rider raised an open palm. "Raven Wing calls for you," he said, the English words carefully formed. "He dies. Wants to see you first." Ethan felt something cold settle in his gut. Chief Raven Wing, a man he'd pulled from an icy creek during a winter raid gone wrong. They'd survived 3 days in a blizzard together, sharing what little food they had, speaking in the halting combination of broken English and Apache that men use when death sits as a third companion. Without a word, Ethan saddled Thunder and followed the messengers east. The Apache camp lay hidden in a narrow valley, invisible until you were almost upon it. Women moved between lodges, children paused in their play, and warriors watched with wary eyes as Ethan rode in. The air hung heavy with cedar smoke and something else, the solemn weight of impending loss. Raven Wing's lodge stood apart from the others. Inside, the once powerful chief lay on a bed of furs, his face drawn with pain. A wound in his side had festered, the medicine man's herbs proving useless against the white man's bullets. "You came," Raven Wing said, his voice a dry whisper. "I came," Ethan replied, kneeling beside the dying man. "The one they call Cortez." Raven Wing's eyes flashed with hatred. "He hunts my people, sells them to silver mines across the border. His men ambushed us. I am the last." Ethan knew the name. Cortez, a bounty hunter who'd built a reputation on Apache scalps and captives. A man who considered the frontier his private hunting ground. "My brothers are dead," Raven Wing continued. "My wives, Nahimana and Elena, they have no protection." His hand gripped Ethan's arm with surprising strength. "They will come for them next." There must be others among your people, Ethan began. No others. Cortez killed all men of my bloodline. The chief's eyes bore into him. Only you. Take them. Protect them. Ethan felt the weight of what was being asked. Not just shelter, but responsibility. In a land where a lone woman was prey, two Apache women would be hunted relentlessly. He took Raven Wing's hand, speaking the Apache words of oath. My life for theirs. The chief closed his eyes, satisfied. By dawn, he was gone. They were waiting at his gate when he returned. Two women standing straight-backed and still as deer sensing danger. Nahimana, the younger by a year, wore a buckskin dress adorned with intricate beadwork that spoke of status. Her black hair hung in long braids woven with leather strands and blue beads. Her eyes, deep and steady, watched Ethan with careful assessment. The calluses on her hands told of a woman familiar with bow and knife. Beside her stood Elena, taller and more strongly built. Her cream cotton dress was trail-worn, a hunting knife sheathed at her belt. Half Apache, half Mexican by her features, with a thin scar visible on her wrist. She surveyed the ranch with the eyes of someone mapping escape routes. House is cool inside, Ethan said simply. Well's good. 2 rooms empty. They followed him without a word, carrying small bundles of possessions. Inside, they took in the sparse furnishings. The wooden table, the stone fireplace, the shelves of practical supplies. Elena ran her fingers along the windowsill, checking the thickness of the walls. Nahimana stood in the center of the room, still as a statue. As Ethan closed the door, he felt the weight of Raven Wing's dying request settle firmly on his shoulders. This wasn't just about honoring a debt anymore. This was about keeping a sacred promise in a land where promises were as scarce as water. Dawn broke with Ethan already in the yard, 3 wooden targets set up against the far corral fence. He laid out the Winchester, a Remington revolver, and a box of ammunition on the wooden table. First lesson, he said as the women emerged from the house. Out here, the gun is not for killing. It's to make sure your enemies know you're ready to. Elena picked up the Remington with familiar ease. Nahimana approached the Winchester more cautiously, her fingers tracing the lever action. You know how to shoot? Ethan asked. My father taught me the bow, Nahimana replied. The rifle is different. Not so different. Ethan positioned her hands. Both need a steady breath and a true eye. The morning air cracked with gunfire as they practiced. Elena hit her targets with quick efficiency. Nahimana took longer to aim, but her shots landed with deadly precision. By midday, both women could reload and fire with competence that would give any attacker pause. As they cleaned the weapons afterward, Ethan caught Elena studying him. Why did you leave the bluecoats? She asked suddenly. Raven Wing said you were a scout. Ethan's hand stilled on the rifle barrel. Seebeck Creek, he said finally. The army ordered us to fire on women and children. I refused. And they let you live? Nahimana looked up, surprised. They called me traitor, discharged me without honor. His voice hardened. Better that than what they wanted me to become. That night around the fireplace, the silence between them eased. Nahimana spoke of the raid that had decimated their village the previous year. Elena revealed that Cortez didn't just collect bounties on Apache. He sold women to brothels and mines along the border, where they disappeared forever. Raven Wing fought him for years, Elena said, staring into the flames. Now we are all that remains of his bloodline. Ethan added wood to the fire, watching the sparks rise. As long as I breathe, Cortez won't touch either of you. 3 days later, Ethan found the tracks, boot prints by the creek, a mile from the ranch, fresh Winchester shell casings, a half-smoked Mexican cigarette ground into the mud. Someone had been watching the property. He followed the signs to the ridge overlooking the ranch. From there, a man with a good spyglass could see everything. The house, the corral, the daily movements of everyone inside. When he returned, an arrow stood embedded in the barn door, not fired but placed there deliberately. A calling card. Cortez's mark. "They've found us," Ethan told the women as they gathered on the porch. "And they want us to know it." Elena's hand moved to her knife. "How many?" "3, maybe 4. They're watching, planning." Nahimana's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. "What do we do?" "We prepare," Ethan said, "and we don't run." The confrontation came the next day. 3 riders approaching from the Western Trail, unhurried, confident. Ethan stood at the gate, Winchester in hand. The women positioned inside the house with clear firing lines through the windows. The lead rider was a gaunt man with pale eyes and a jagged scar across his left cheek. "Garrett," he introduced himself with a cold smile. "This here's Pike." He nodded to a younger, wiry man whose fingers twitched near his holster, and Mendez. The third man wore a black coat despite the heat, a custom-made Colt tucked in a tooled leather holster. "Heard you acquired some special guests, Morgan," Garrett said, eyes scanning the property. "My employer, Mr. Cortez, is particularly interested in meeting them." "Your employer can go to hell," Ethan replied evenly. Pike laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound. $500 apiece for those Apache women, dead or alive. "They're under my protection." Ethan's finger rested alongside the Winchester's trigger guard. "Anyone who tries to change that won't leave breathing." Mendez spoke for the first time, his accent thick. "You cannot watch them always, senor. Everyone sleeps. Everyone makes mistakes." "That's your first one," Ethan said, "thinking I won't put a bullet in you right now." The tension stretched between them, taut as a bowstring. Finally, Garrett tugged his horse's reins. "We'll be seeing you again, Morgan," he said. "Count on it." As they rode away, Ethan knew the real battle had just begun. "We need allies," Elena insisted that night. "In Dry Creek, there are people who hate Cortez. Many's cheated, families he's destroyed." Ethan considered this. Dry Creek was a half-day's ride, a mining town where the law existed only in theory, but they needed ammunition, supplies, and information. "We leave at dawn," he decided. "Together. This ranch isn't safe anymore." The town sprawled in the shadow of the Superstition Mountains, a collection of saloons, trading posts, and hastily built housing for miners and cowboys. Eyes followed them as they rode down the main street, Ethan flanked by 2 Apache women, all 3 armed and watchful. Sheriff Caldwell stood on the jailhouse steps, badge gleaming against his dust-covered vest. He and Ethan had served together in the 6th Cavalry before Cybeat Creek divided them. "Didn't expect to see you in town, Stone," Caldwell said, using Ethan's old military nickname. "Didn't expect to come," Ethan dismounted. "We need to talk." Inside the jailhouse, Caldwell's expression darkened as Ethan explained the situation. "Cortez has put bounties on them, 500 each," Caldwell confirmed. "He's got a dozen guns riding with him now, and backing from Colonel Forsyth at the Silver Eagle mine. They need workers, and Apache captives come cheap." "Any chance of help from the law?" Ethan asked, already knowing the answer. Caldwell snorted. "Law stops at the town limits, and you know it. But," he hesitated, "there are some who'd stand with you. Cortez has made enemies." As they gathered supplies and ammunition, Ethan felt the noose tightening. Too many eyes in town, too many whispers following them. They left Dry Creek as the sun began its descent, taking the canyon route home, faster but narrower. The ambush came at the tightest point. 4 riders blocked the path ahead. Gunfire erupted from the rocks above. Ethan's Winchester answered, dropping the first attacker. Elena's knife found a second man's throat as he leapt from the rocks. Nahimana took a bullet grazed to her arm but stayed mounted, firing the Remington with deadly accuracy. When the dust settled, 3 attackers lay dead. The 4th fled, shouting back, "Cortez comes with 20 more." No one survives. Blood streaked Nahimana's sleeve as Ethan bandaged her wound. We can't outrun them, she said softly. No, Ethan agreed. We make our stand at the ranch. For 2 days, they transformed the ranch into a fortress, trenches dug around the perimeter, firing positions established in the house and barn, escape routes planned, water barrels filled and ammunition stockpiled. Ethan taught them cavalry defensive tactics, lines of fire, controlled retreats, conserving ammunition. From farm tools and blasting powder used for clearing rocks, they crafted makeshift explosives. Why do you stay? Elena asked him the night before the expected attack. This is not your fight. Ethan looked at her across the firelight. This is exactly my fight. I gave my word to Ravenwing. A man is nothing if he doesn't keep his word. Nahimana's voice was soft in the darkness. Our ancestors believed that when a warrior dies protecting others, his spirit joins the eagle that soars highest. Let's hope that eagle can wait a while longer, Ethan replied. Dawn broke with the sound of approaching horses, but not from the direction they expected. Sheriff Caldwell rode at the head of 8 riders, 5 townsmen and 3 Apache hunters. Couldn't let you face Cortez alone, Caldwell said, dismounting. Man's killed too many. Time had ended. The reinforcements brought more rifles, ammunition, and determination. Still, they would be outnumbered. Cortez's force appeared an hour later, 15 armed men spreading out along the ridge. At their center rode a tall figure on a black stallion, a silver-trimmed sombrero shading his face, twin revolvers at his hips. That's him, Elena whispered from her position at the window. Cortez. The attack came like a thunderstorm, sudden and overwhelming. Gunfire raked the ranch house. 2 of Caldwell's men fell in the first volley. Ethan and the others returned fire from protected positions, dropping 4 attackers. Nahimana proved lethal with the Winchester, picking off men from the roof with calm precision. Elena moved between positions, keeping ammunition flowing, firing when needed. But Cortez's men kept coming, using wagon wheels as rolling cover, setting fire to the outer barn. As smoke filled the air, Mendez and 3 others breached the east side of the house. Ethan met them in the kitchen, Colt blazing. 2 fell immediately. Mendez's bullet grazed Ethan's side before the man retreated. They're inside, Elena shouted, firing through an interior doorway. The house became a maze of gunfire and smoke. A stray bullet ignited the stored kerosene, setting the back room ablaze. Through the chaos, Ethan saw Cortez himself entering through the burning doorway, Mendez at his side. Find the women, Cortez ordered, drawing both revolvers. Ethan intercepted him in the narrow hallway, firing his last 2 bullets. One struck Mendez in the chest. The other missed Cortez by inches. Out of ammunition, Ethan lunged with his hunting knife. Cortez was faster, driving a blade into Ethan's shoulder. They crashed into the kitchen table, sending it splintering to the floor. Pain exploded through Ethan's body as they grappled. Cortez's second knife slashed toward his throat. Elena appeared behind Cortez, driving her knife toward his back. But Mendez, somehow still alive, grabbed her ankle. Cortez spun, catching her arm and flinging her against the wall. I'll take her first, Cortez snarled, pressing his blade to Elena's throat. The Winchester's distinctive lever action sounded from the doorway. Nahimana stood there, rifle aimed at Cortez's head. Release her, she commanded. Cortez laughed. Your rifle's empty, girl. I counted your shots. He was right. The hammer fell on an empty chamber with a hollow click. In that moment of distraction, Ethan lunged forward. Cortez slashed wildly, catching Ethan across the chest, but momentum carried them both into the burning wall. Flames caught Cortez's sleeve as they crashed through the weakened timber. They rolled in the dirt outside. Cortez's knife raised for a killing blow, but Ethan caught his wrist, driving Cortez's own blade into the bounty hunter's chest. "This is Apache land," Ethan growled as the light faded from Cortez's eyes. "And you're trespassing." With their leader fallen, the remaining attackers scattered. Sheriff Caldwell found Ethan bleeding in the yard, Elena and Nahimana pulling him clear of the burning house. "Might have to report you died in the fighting, Stone," Caldwell said, helping bind Ethan's wounds. "Be easier that way." 1 month later, Ethan stood on the newly built porch of the ranch house. His wounds had healed enough to let him help with the reconstruction. The scars would remain, new ones among many. Elena worked in the garden, her movements quick and precise. Nahimana led the horses into the corral, speaking to them in soft Apache. The land stretched out before them, harsh and unforgiving, but theirs. Nahimana approached, holding something in her hand, a beaded necklace that had belonged to Ravenwing. She placed it around Ethan's neck without a word. "He would want you to have this," she said. "You kept your oath." Elena joined them, resting her hand on the porch rail. "And now we stay because this is home." Ethan looked out at the land they had defended together, at the 2 women who had fought beside him. Something had changed in him, the solitude of 6 years washing away like dust and rain. "We didn't just survive," he said finally. "We're building something worth fighting for." In the distance, an eagle soared high above the mesa, free and watchful in the endless blue sky.